2, 1, mark. All right, morning. It seems like these days there's a lot of discourse over the idea of um, free speech, etc., stuff like that. I've heard the term used. I tend to think of myself as a free speech enthusiast. I like the idea of it, but obviously there would be like certain common sense kind of exceptions to that. At some point, speech starts to bleed into action, or can, I think. So maybe the question is exactly where that is more controversial, but I think most people agree that that type of thing can exist. In addition to that, there is a type of dynamic that exists where I think most of us would agree that it's kind of the prerogative of a teacher to present whatever information they want, to whatever extent they want, and in whatever order they choose. The problem in that is that an incomplete picture can present a very unbalanced sort of perspective. It can present a very different sort of picture than a fully complete information, I guess. And to my mind, in an ideal world, a reasonable alternative to censorship would be to juxtapose like incomplete information with a more complete perspective. If someone's talking about a really controversial thing and they have their very definitive perspective, then just, put them in a room with a person who disagrees with them, or even just put the videos or media together in such a fashion that people can watch them side by side or in sequence with one another. So that if they are ignorant or unbalanced in their perspective, it's their own fault. They have to be more proactive about being ignorant or bigoted or whatever the case. In addition to that, there's another thing that annoys me. It does feel like partisan hackery tends to beget partisan hackery. So when a person is incapable of being fair or balanced or nuanced in their perspective, the fact that they are incapable of doing so, the fact that they are biased, will cause other people to be like, okay, so you are who you are, I have to be who I am. That's perhaps an inane observation, but it annoys me nonetheless. All right, moving on. All right. We have a video by Chris Williamson, PSYOP expert, brainwashing is real, and it's happening now. Chase Hughes? Chase. All right. Let's do it.
Who are you? How do you describe what you do for work?
It's so hard. But if I'm talking to somebody that's boring, I'll just tell them I teach psychology stuff.
Nice. There's kind of a weird thing that I think a lot of people are interested in psychology. It's one of those things where like everyone wants to kind of control or understand other people or whatever the case. So it does feel like it's one of those things that everyone's at least a little bit interested in. I feel like, yeah, I heard Jordan Peterson once say that, everyone, like, that, like, it's easy for him to talk about what he does, I think, but I think he was applying it more on a, large scale. He was saying, oh, no, people will always be interested in what you do if you're, no, never mind. I don't know where I was going with that. I have to go and watch it again, too. I think the essence was that he was thinking that once you get past a certain point, it kind of opens up and more people will be interested. I don't know if that's the case with a lot of fields of topic, like quantum physics. There's not a lot of people who would really be into that, but psychology is quite practical in its application, in theory, in any case. And a lot of people kind of are intrigued by the notion of understanding or being able to control or see into the minds of others, know when people are lying to them, etc., etc. So its appeal is very broad.
But if I want to get into it, I'll say, I teach everything from brainwashing to interrogation, applied on yourself and other people. And
I like his shirt, and I want one.
Most of what I do is train sales teams nowadays. So sales has gotten really addicted to this stuff. But I've studied neuroscience for
What?
a long time.
No, I have no problem believing that, honestly.
And I spent my life trying to figure out how the brain works and how to shift human behavior.
No, I was remembering that actually Jordan Peterson as well, one of his lectures I had seen, I think, where he was talking about the woman who had designed cattle or slaughterhouses. I think they had effectively done it in a spiral so that the cows maybe wouldn't see the ones in the center getting slaughtered or wherever, and they would stay more docile or something like that. Part of me thinks of that with regards to advertising or people who want people to buy stuff. That's how they see us. Just cows being led to the slaughter.
Not just like to get someone to confess to something in an interrogation, but how do we modify our own behavior? And what are the mechanics that make that possible?
Do you think we're living in the most psychologically manipulated era in human history?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hands down. But I mean, you go to ancient Rome, some shit would happen and they would say, hey, do the lion fighting thing with the guy. Let's distract everybody. So
that's something in toast. Bread and circuses for the masses.
I don't think it's new. I think it's a lot more pervasive, though.
Is that because of it being facilitated through technology, or is that because of a requirement for control? What's the motivation for that?
It does feel like it could have something to do with just the sheer amount of people and how we've had to, like, at one point in time, I think I've said something like this before, but the notion would have been that at one point in time, our greatest enemy was nature, right? We were dealing in an unfriendly world, and we hadn't really domesticated it as much as we have today, and consequently, you didn't really negotiate with nature. You beat the crap out of it and took what you wanted or what you had to take. Point being, in the modern era, like, we've gotten big enough that the notion of survival, the case would be, I think, in my mind, that you almost need a different set of skills. We develop different sets of skills to deal with the masses, to deal with humanity and their masses, rather than to deal with nature, our greatest enemy at the time.
I think just the digital media. If you think about what is the number one fear of human beings, like every psychology class talks about it, it's the public speaking. But it's never public speaking. It's I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be ostracized, because in our brain that's 200,000 years old, getting kicked out of a tribe means I'm dead. I'm not going to have sex. I won't have babies, and I'm going to die. It's a mortal fear of dying. But if you go back to the 1980s, if I did something stupid in high school or even as an adult, I have to worry about 30 or 40 people judging me, and maybe,
which nowadays it's like exponentially larger.
Really kind of kicking me out of a social group. And now with social media, you've got to.
I thought of this whole notion with regards to the idea of eugenics, where, like, as it stands in our societies, there's a large degree of hypocrisy. People will represent themselves as being better than what they actually are. But if you create some sort of mechanism, perhaps like what he's talking about, like the internet, where it's not just a small group of people judging you, it's a huge group of people judging you, or applying it to eugenics, where your entire genetic lineage will be dependent upon whether or not you are good or smart or useful, whether or not you have idiosyncrasies or insanity or something like that. It feels like what you would end up with as a cause of that is a hyper hypocritical either individual or society. A society that's built around, I need to represent myself as the best possible thing ever, where candor would be nearly non-existent, more or less. It's kind of an interesting to think about that type of thing.
Worry about 5 or 10 million. So the consequences of doing something wrong are unbelievably exponentially increased, which has made us a whole different society, which we could get into. And this is the...
Yeah, disagree.
origin of this pandemic of loneliness that we're in right now, where everybody will agree that we're in a pandemic levels of loneliness, and you don't hear anyone saying, I'm lonely, which is a deeper root of this exact problem.
What's happening then?
You ever study French philosopher, this guy named Sartre?
I've read a little bit
I've heard it pronounced Sartre, but
of his stuff, but like just single quotes.
He had this play, it was called Sartre's Hell, where three people are locked in a room, basically like this. And it's a play. But the room's not totally locked. Every couple hours,
I'm already hooked.
of course, the door opens and you can leave if you want to. And nobody leaves. And they're all desperate to be seen a certain way by someone else. This one guy, I'm paraphrasing, but he wants to be seen as a good person. So he asked this woman in there, please tell me I'm a good person, please. And she says, yeah, you're a good person. But he knows she doesn't mean it. So he stays. The door opens, nobody leaves, and they stay because they're waiting for this confirmation from other people who they are. And in this world today,
It's interesting.
with how performative and artificial everybody has become, is that I've got to show my best self, I've got to hide shame, I've got to conceal all this guilt and the stuff that people carry around. The reason that somebody can feel lonely in a room full of people, and I'm not just talking about on Facebook, I'm saying like in a real room full of people, is because no matter how many times your friends come over and pat you on the back and say, oh, Chris, you did a great job. We love you. You're a great guy. Your spouse might say, oh, we love you and you're a great person. In the back of your mind, you know you're faking it, and you know that none of them really like the real you.
See, I think that is kind of the problem. If you're the type, I think we inevitably, to some extent, judge other people by our own idiosyncrasies. Like sometimes you distrusting a person has more to do with you. That observation has more to do with you than it has to do with them. It has more to do with you than whether or not they're actually trustworthy. Because I think we judge people based upon our own character to some extent. It's not that we can't abstract another person might be. I think to some extent you can't imagine a person being different or distinct from yourself, hopefully anyways. But, again, I think on some really fundamental level, you tend to see other people and what other people are capable of and what other people are doing. You see it through the lens of your own experience and what you're capable of and what you're doing. So a thief never trusts anyone. An adulteress never trusts their spouse. Right? The thief always expects to get it stolen from. Because that's what they would do. That's what they do.
And you get, at the end of the day, and I'm not saying this is you, but at the end of the day, you're lonely in a room.
Oh, he's definitely accusing Chris. This is what Chris is. This is what's wrong with you, Chris.
Room of 150, 200 people, because you know that none of them know you, and you haven't ever really been seen.
See, that is kind of a strange sort of thing, too. Like the whole notion that the more people you're around, the less lonely you should be. I feel like past a certain saturation point, it's almost kind of the opposite. It's really hard to be intimate with a lot of people. You kind of have to isolate that down to, well, maybe not entirely. But I feel like trying to appeal to people on a mass scale, getting people to like you, is not the best way to actually connect with people. The only parts of yourself that will have like mass appeal will be, I tend to think, the most shallow or the most shallow, broadly appealing characteristics that you have. So if you boil your personality down to those things, then you can be popular. But it doesn't lend itself to, okay, these people actually care about me. They like something about you. They like that characteristic that you present in public, but they don't really care about you. That's how I would tend to think of it.
By anybody. So increased fear of judgment because of social media equals increased performance, equals I'm wearing a costume almost all the time. And nobody has ever seen me. Nobody really knows me. So even if they claim to like me, in the back of my brain, there's this little reminder mechanism that says they don't like the real me. And nobody ever has. Nobody's ever seen me. So this is my opinion, but
Well, I feel like especially for younger people, that's a problem. I feel like it's one of those things, like, once you learn to be yourself, you'll find it quite fun. And maybe I've not mastered this myself, but I feel like you tend to, you'll enjoy telling the truth a lot if you ever start doing it. You'll enjoy being honest a lot if you ever start doing it. It's one of those things that it's the most sustainable. It's the most pleasant because it doesn't require you to behave a certain way. You don't have to be like doing this to every impulse that you have. So it's fun. It's fun. It's worth trying.
I think that's the root of the pandemic that we're in right now, of loneliness. Like, we're more connected than ever and more performative than ever at the same time. So we can't really connect. And our brains are wired for 120, 130 person tribe. And we start getting over that and we have massive issues.
It's interesting that a lot of the time the person has been subsumed by the persona, the role that people are playing.
Yeah.
But the persona is incapable of receiving love. It can only receive praise at best.
I like that.
And it feels...
I was just thinking, there was a quote I heard from Dr. K, who was quoting Carl Jung, I believe. It was the notion that something to the effect that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And I really like that quote as well. I've heard weird things about Carl Jung, but that's kind of a really nice, it's a nice way of looking at it. You have to be able to master yourself, master all your impulses, and be aware of as much as you can about who you are and what you are. Otherwise, you'll be someone else will be something else will be steering your ship. That sounds just weird. But I like the quote. It's a good quote.
like a pat on the back. It's the same as people don't love Chris Hemsworth. They love Thor. They don't love Russell Crowe. They love Gladiator. So how can you be surprised if you don't genuinely existentially feel the connection with your pursuits and your successes and the people around you? You know that they're just applauding the role that you play as opposed to seeing who you are truly.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie Pig with Nicolas Cage?
No.
You got to watch it. Even if you watch this one scene, it's like 5 minutes long. Nicolas Cage plays this guy who's just kind of had enough and he stopped performing forever. Like, he doesn't care. He's not mean or anything, just doesn't perform. And he goes to this restaurant. He's a famous chef and he's exiled and stuff. And this chef is just
I don't think I've ever watched that one. Admittedly, I'm such a bestial sort of person that my experience with Nick Cage is probably Croods or something like that. I've watched other stuff of his, but not well versed, perhaps.
tending to be a certain type of person so that his restaurant is more successful. And Nicolas Cage just basically says, none of this is real. You're not real, which means they're not real. And none of this, everything's fake. Everything here is completely fake.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to wake up every day and there's going to be less of you and less of you until there's nothing left that you will ever recognize again. And it's this massive awakening scene for this guy. And it's beautiful. And I think when people watch it, they assume, oh, I'm in the Nick Cage role here.
Mm.
And maybe sometimes in our life we are, but I think in other times we need to be kind of shaken awake and somebody grabs our little camera and changes our camera angle to look at a situation differently. I want to be woken up like that in every possible way. And I think that's what we all need.
Is brainwashing real? What's true and false about
This is kind of the place I was going to get interested.
that?
Brainwashing is absolutely real.
So what do you have here as far as Social media reprograms, algorithm engineering, interrogators get people, psychology of building, confidence.
There's a 4-step process, and it spells out the word fear.
Fear is a path to the, sorry.
It's focus, emotion, agitation, and repetition. So
I can imagine focus being a very easy type of thing,
if we start with focus,
like a very intuitive type of whatever. I've often thought that that has a lot to do with the notion of like hypnosis. Like if you can't get a person to focus on the hypnotist, or if their mind is just going in 50 different directions, they're incapable of concentrating on what the hypnotist is doing. I have to wonder if that would, I guess I don't know how much I believe in the notion of hypnotism in general, but feels like that would be one of the prerequisites. You need them to be able to, whatever. And for that matter, with regards to interrogation, that's why I think they probably have interrogation rooms. It's so you eliminate outside stimuli and you get a one singular stimuli and then a clean reaction to that. That'd be the idea in any case. If they're just all over the place inside their head, I have a feeling they would mess with that.
This is me routinely breaking what you are predicting to be what's going to happen next, over and over and over, in a massive amount. 1 or 2 times, this is what triggers a mammal brain, our mammal brain, and a dog. You're walking down a pathway in the woods and a stick breaks behind a tree, and you're like, what was that? You're not worried about anything else. So the fastest way to generate human focus or mammal focus is novelty. Some
true.
Genuine thing happens that you didn't expect. So that's the first. That's what we generate massive amount of focus. And then it's emotion. And with emotion, there's an old hypnosis technique that became
That was right. I knew it all along.
Popular in the 50s. This guy named Dr. Milton Erickson popularized this thing called fractionation. So if you...
Sounds weird.
And you'll be familiar with like Channel 4 and Darren Brown. I know a lot of Americans aren't, but he's kind of there's no American equivalent of Darren Brown.
Oz, maybe the closest, Perlman?
Yeah, Oz Perlman, yeah. So they figured out, like, if I pull somebody down in hypnosis and then...
We actually watched the one with Oz Perlman on it. It's interesting. Never did watch the rest of it. I should one of these days.
And take them gently out of it when I put them right back down in. So this is in quick succession. I take you out of hypnosis and then I put you back into hypnosis again. You'll go deeper every time. And there's no such thing as depth in hypnosis. What they essentially mean is you'll have more GABA. You know what GABA is? It's a neurotransmitter in your system, like the safety chemical. And you'll also have
interesting
a higher degree of theta wave brain state. And if I could just keep going up and then back down and up and then back down, you're deeper and deeper and deeper in a hole every single time. So if you look at your feed, anybody out there, you open whatever feed you want on whatever app you're thinking of right now. And you kind of scroll through your feed, you're going to see stuff that kind of brings you back up, but only for a second or two. And then it's fear and scarcity. And
it is kind of I think that's actually one of the algorithms they use. But the notion would be that more than any sort of happiness or joy or something like that, people have a tendency to react to anger and fear and all of that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what the algorithm, maybe I think to a larger degree, that is what the algorithm runs on. There was actually some sort of thing, I think It's a Gundam is a YouTuber who had done a video on this, that at some point in time, they started to literally push news stories on YouTube more so than anything else. Like, I think up to a certain point, it would have been a lot of like cat videos or stuff like that. And at some point, they started to, they believed it was their duty to start pushing news on YouTube. It's maybe worth a watch if you ever get a chance. Like, I think it's a video about the algorithm and stuff that was fiddling with it. Or the YouTube back end, like the people who were deciding what goes where.
it follows the thing of getting your focus showing you an authority figure, telling you something threatening, making you fearful of judgment of a tribe, and then making you emotional, and then bringing you back up and then back down in that cycle. So it's focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. You'll see it in your feed, guaranteed. And you don't even need to.
Again, I sometimes wonder about these tactics. Like, does the fact that people know about them, does that make it not work? The fact that people are, I feel like it would make it not work as much. Because people just, they type, I think they tend to innately not like manipulation. So if they know you're trying to manipulate them, like if I say I'm trying to make you mad and then I insult your mother, your reaction to that will be very different than if I just walk up to someone on the street and insult their mother. Like if they're being prepared for like they know that they're about to be manipulated and that whatever I do is intended to manipulate them. That's very different than some sort of natural scenario in which that would just occur and they would have just a natural reaction to that. I feel like. So I feel like if a person would know these tactics, it would have some effect on their malleability with regards to those brainwashing tactics.
Scroll for like 5 minutes. You'll see it
Ish.
right away. And then it'll be like one little thing to kind of bring you up. Like one of those videos where the people are like, oh, we just found this baby deer on our porch one day and we decided to bottle feed him and raise him. And then, it's like a fast cut to where like he's a giant deer like sleeping in the kid's bed or something and he's like a family member now. It's like a heartwarming video that feels, and I love watching those, but it feels great. And then bam, they pull you back down again into the cycle. But what you'll notice after you see that fear video at the end of the focus, authority, tribe, and emotion, right at the end of that, they're either going to A, bring you up, or B, show you an ad. Now, I've never heard anybody talk about this before, but you can absolutely see it. And I'm not immune. Like I've bought stupid shit on Instagram like anybody else.
I don't think I've ever bought something specifically because an ad told me to. Maybe I'm unique in that regards because I don't know if I would ever I feel like I'm kind of obdurate to an unreasonable degree. Like if I even catch a hint of you're trying to get me to do something, it's too much self-description.
Knowing about this doesn't get you vaccinated against manipulation. I bought the dumbest shit in the world on Instagram. It just means I'm a good, well-informed victim of this stuff. But that's the core of brainwashing.
Again, I can't help but think it would have at least some effect on your susceptibility.
Is focus, emotion. That's that fractionation part of up and down. Then agitation. So this is doing something to where the mammalian brain recognizes this is a different environment than I was expecting, not a thing that's happening. So now the landscape is changing. The oil prices are going up. This big thing is happening. There's a shortage of some.
So that seems like, okay, the novelty of the thing would wear off if you were aware of what's going on. You would grow to expect that, okay, this is what they're going to do, this is what they're going to feed me, etc., etc. Like, if you learn to expect that sort of manipulation on the part of whoever's running the algorithm, it feels like you would inevitably start to not sense the novelty, and it would start to lose its effect, maybe.
Critical resource, and then repetition. So if it's in a detainee environment, the massive focus is then.
All right, give me a second. I want to jump to. All right, let's go here.
And you'll see reduce. Like I'm going to reach for this. I'm going to stop, and then. Let's go mammalian and then human. So the mammalian fear response or insecurity response is a reduced arm swing.
Interesting. Maybe I would have thought of that.
Incomplete movements. So like I'm going to reach for this, I'm going to stop and then kind of continue doing it, and then the movements aren't completed. You'll see a lot of that kind of stuff. And you'll see reduced eye contact and a downward motion. And biggest of all, you're going to see the body.
I have noticed, though, that a lot of times if you're talking with a person who's the more comfortable a person is in a conversation, the more they'll use their hands to gesture and whatnot. It seems like, versus if they're not very comfortable or whatever, they might, I don't know, do some sort of locked arm / hand thingy. Yeah, but I do tend to think like that animation that plays a huge, like, it's a high indicator of this person is at least comfortable ish. And that's my theory.
Moving or staying in areas that protect arteries. This means you'll see a lot less of this. You'll see the humerus kind of sit in a little bit closer to the body while they're talking, so the brachial artery is protected. You'll see the shoulders a little bit up in social situations. That'll stay a little higher. Their head
wouldn't have maybe noticed the shoulders
coming down a little bit. Protecting the carotid arteries. You'll see the arms in front of their body like this. Sometimes this is called a fig leaf gesture, named by Alan Pease.
Because it's covering the genitals?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But it's also protecting the femoral arteries at the same time. And men are more likely to do that. Women are more likely to wrap a single arm around the abdomen like this while they're talking during, like if they're insecure. And this is protecting the uterus area. And
that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of them as being like gender specific, but I imagine they very well could be.
There are studies on this. I have no idea who did the studies, but this was original.
It does feel like I've wondered, and I want to, it would be nice to ask some sort of psychologist this, like if with regards to things like serial killing or with regards to things like criminal behavior, if you would have different origins to the same behaviors in men and women. Like in a male, some sort of abuse could cause blank response, but in a woman, that same response would have a completely different cause. Like an all roads lead to Rome type of scenario. Like where with regards to the gender differentiation, you would have different responses to different things, or the same response to different things. Be interesting to study that sort of thing.
Originally written about by a guy named Desmond Morris, who just, I think, died in the last month or two. He was in his 90s, but he's like the first researcher who wrote a book about really observing humans as if they were animals. Like how did their body move? And so the book was called Naked Ape. They're like us, like the hairless monkey. And he was like this savant at human behavior. But anyway, like when you're looking at the insecure behaviors, and if you're looking at two people, what you really want to look at, especially if there's two people, is which person needs something more from the other person and which person is reacting to the other person.
Interesting.
The one man, I'm hesitant to reveal this. The one thing that I teach a lot of these venture capital people, they'll get pitched a lot. I've never been to one of the pitches.
I've been on the pitching side quite a bit over the last 6 months, so
okay.
I know what this feels like.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I teach them to look for is what's called lip compression. And we tend to do this at times when we are withholding a little bit of information, or
that's not something I would have known.
Or we're withholding an emotion. So like
well, and that's the point too, maybe at least with regards to body language. There's so much of this stuff that I feel like is natural. So I'd mentioned with regards to the other thing, with regards to brainwashing, being on the receiving end of like brainwashing tactics, I feel like you would eventually start to figure that out. But with regards to like body language, it feels like quite often in the scenario itself, there would be so much coming at you that to control everything, it would be like trying to juggle couple hundred things at the same time, and there would be no way to control everything about what you're doing and what your body is doing in that scenario. So like inauthenticity to some extent. I don't know how possible. Maybe you could train yourself in certain regards, like train yourself to behave a certain way, but it does feel like just at least initially it would be quite hard, even if you're aware of the pattern, to actually stymie it in some regard.
imagine like if your friend started a new job and you're like, hey, dude, how's the new job? And he goes, oh, it's great.
Mm-hmm. See, I feel like that people would almost notice a little bit, but maybe he's combining that just this lip compression with other things.
So that lip compression is withholding. So what I teach them to do is watch for the compression. The moment you see it, just rewind. What were they just talking about right before you see it?
How's the financials in the business?
Yeah. He says, oh, all the financials are great. We've projected out a good thing for the next couple of quarters. And you'll see that just that little lip compression
Is that lip compression? I'm always interested in why that particular expression or feature is associated with that particular motive.
I've kind of wondered that too. Like, how is it that they even become to be a thing? Like, maybe it's intuitive. Maybe it's just connected to a certain part of your brain that is associated with that thing. So it's just kind of natural that you would do that. But I don't know.
Or leak. What is it? Is it?
It's our first way of withholding. It's our first way to hold in milk. Like a tongue jut, like after someone tells a lie, like there's some.
So it's just like a kind of a natural type of shut up, don't speak, or something like that. So it might have something to do with just the notion of restraint in general.
We call the tongue jut. That's very common. Like this. This is our first no. It's a way to force a nipple out of the mouth. And these are theories of Desmond Morris's as well.
Interesting.
Like this is our first way of withholding and keeping milk in the mouth. And our first no is pushing our tongue out or pursing our lips a little bit. What?
That's sick. Is that not cool?
Okay, yeah.
Is that not cool?
Amazing.
Sorry, I'm enthralled in the conversation. Is this not? Are people more bored usually? Because this is brilliant.
Okay, good. Yeah, maybe I expect you to be bored. It's boring to me because I've been looking at it for like 10, 15
I'm British. You have to remember, you have to filter it through the British, whatever this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's our first no. So tongue out of the mouth, that tongue jut is our first no. There's a difference, though, between a tongue sticking out really quick and then a tongue licking the lips. So a tongue licking the lips is called a hygienic gesture. So it's made to make somebody more attractive. So a hygienic gesture might be me sitting up a little straighter and like pulling.
Well, you could imagine, like, at least for women, probably like hair straightening or maybe some sort of compulsive thing like that would have to do with be in the same category a little bit.
Pulling my shirt down, like rubbing lint off, licking my lips. All those gestures that are made to look us more attractive. Those you want to look for before someone starts talking. So if they know a topic's coming up, like, all right, next we're going to get into financials. And then you see hygienic gestures before they start talking. So typically you'll see hygienic gestures. So they're improving their appearance before the delivery of something that might be questionable.
You're trying to stack the deck in their favor.
Yeah. And there's no behavior for deception. None.
There's no behavior for
That's like oriented towards
deception. What does that mean?
There's no behavior that's like, this is deception. None. Zero. What we're measuring with behavior is stress.
Interesting. So there's nothing like directly connecting that says this person, like, I'm going to deceive you now, but there's a lot of things that indicate like secondary.
And B, changes. Like somebody says, oh, someone tapping their finger all the time, or tapping their finger means that they're stressed and that means they're lying. That's total bullshit. Absolute bullshit. So if I just tap my finger all day long, what you need to look for is when I stop.
I was going to say, you're just a finger tapper.
Yes. So your first thing.
Well, that's like, I think I've thought of that before. You need to establish a baseline first and then analyze the deviations from the baseline. You kind of have to do that. Anyways, really interesting stuff. Go look at it if you want. PSYOP expert, brainwashing is real, and it's happening now. Chase Hughes. You can go look at that if you like. It's a Chris Williamson video though. It's kind of cool that recently they did that thing where you can combine or do a what is it called? A collab. So when the video shows up, it'll have both Chris Williamson and Chase Hughes as well. I don't know if in this case it does, but you can have that thing where it has both people's insignia on it. All right, moving on. Ghost Wives of Henry VIII.
Safe. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
By Wendigoon. But this is the Wendigang channel.
When you think
There's no safe like Simply Safe.
of a haunted house, you might think of creaky floors, flickering lights, maybe a door slamming itself shut in the middle of the night. Or maybe that
I don't like to think about creepy houses.
classic trope where someone looks into a bathroom mirror, bends over to wash their face, and boom, looks back up into a jump scare of a ghost standing behind them. Our
You wonder how many of those things were just created for cinema. Like the notion of someone turning around and all of a sudden someone's there. Like the notion of that happening in real life would be very difficult unless there was a lot of noise around just in general. But I feel like that is kind of one of the whole things in storytelling is that it's meant to be believable, but also not necessarily true to life. Like one of the things in storytelling is that you can skip parts of reality that just would just literally not be possible in reality, right? But because of that, you can make things like horror seem believable, but yet it wouldn't really happen in real life. It's like plausible-ish, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of pseudo-reality. That's what I tend to think of it as being. It's meant to be kind of in that category. It's like life is kind of boring, honestly. So the notion of just writing a story that's completely true to life is very boring. But if you write a story that's, again, pseudo-reality, that if you look, there's a sweet spot there where it doesn't take you out of it, but yeah, you still don't have to deal with all the boring parts of life that would be the in-between parts of the story.
session with Haunted Spaces gives us a chance to confront and explore our primal fears and satisfy curiosities of the dark unknown.
just FYI, I hate horror stuff. I already probably, well, I guess I don't know if I do it a lot, but I'll still sometimes check the back seat of my car because I'm like, oh my goodness, someone's gonna be hiding back there. So I don't think I would deal well with horror movies.
And there's usually some awful reason why the place is haunted in the first place. A violent tragedy that happened some years ago with residual unresolved trauma inviting evil spirits to haunt the living. Perhaps
What is this? This isn't like an AR-15, is it? The stock looks wrong for that. That looks like it's some sort of action mechanism. Isn't... I'm thinking there was some sort of Swiss thing that was maybe along those lines. It looks like some sort of European design, maybe.
it was Victorian-era literature that first reinforced this obsession. Folklore usually insists these spooky insights are a reflection of society's anxieties and flawed morality. But what if I told you that several haunted houses, specifically famous castles and halls, could be traced back to one source? One man, determined to immortalize his legacy and reign, who left a trail of dead wives behind. Wives
How delightful.
who, to this day, have been seen as spirits roaming the very same homes they were left in, ghostly symbols of betrayal and injustice. This is the story of King Henry VIII, whose political and marital ambitions, despite taking place centuries ago, serves as a reminder today of the human cost that comes with power. And to understand his story, how his ghost wives came to be, we must first understand how they lived and ultimately died. So hello everybody, today we're going to be talking about King Henry VIII's ghost wives, and how many a haunted story trace their
I knew he'd gotten married a lot, but I guess it never occurred to me to wonder, like, he had some of them beheaded, right? I thought. Were they all killed, or was it a case of, like, some of them were killed? So part of me was thinking that it had, like, all of it, like, maybe I was just assuming that all of them had been killed.
roots back to them. This was a video that was intended to come out on Halloween, but I didn't do that. So here it is now. So happy Halloween, let's pretend. Well, I'm sure many of you are familiar with King Henry VIII. You may not be familiar with how he inspired a ghost story. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around after the ad as we talk about the ghost wives of King Henry. Of course, one of the scariest things that can happen is someone breaking in. I've had instances at my home or at a business where it seems like someone was there without your permission. And it's terrifying to think that the safety of you and those you love might be in danger. That's why it's important to have security on your side. security like today's sponsor, Simply Safe. I love Simply Safe because it takes all of the headache out of home and guesswork out of what I need. That's because it's one system that you manage it all. Security systems is they alert you after someone has broken in, which ideally you don't want to happen at all. Well, thanks to ActiveGuard, if someone suspicious shows up, like for example, alarms and alert
Black person, perhaps?
the police before they even break in. And now these protection plans
Just kidding. Okay, the black person's a guard. That may or may not have been a deliberate choice. Just saying.
even apply to their smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. It even applies to any emergency you have around the house. Say it gets too cold during the holidays and you have a pipe burst. Simply Safe can alert you to that, or if you're away from the house traveling, they can stop someone from breaking in before the break-in occurs. They're monitoring
Is that this guy? Is he the one pretending?
plans start at around $1 a day. And for the holiday, Simply Safe is offering up to 60% off on their products. Your security matters, and when it comes to being safe, you might as well make it simple. So if you want to get in on this offer, then now's the perfect time. That's because you can save 60% off, get your first month free. That is right, 60% off and your first month free. All you have to do is head to the link in the description at simplysafe.com/wintogang to customize your plan today. And remember, there's no safe like Simply Safe. Thank you
There's no safe like Simply Safe.
all for watching the ad. Thank you to Simply Safe for sponsoring the channel. We are now back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching. Like most emotionally stunted men, we're not going to start with the man himself, but instead, his family. In January of 1486, Henry VII of Lancaster and Elizabeth of York were married. It was a monumental event that united two major families that had been fighting each other for years. This period of civil wars in England, called the War of the Roses, involved the House of Lancaster.
I think Game of Thrones was based off of that type of era. Like, obviously, it's a fictional world, but I think it was kind of based in that type of notion,
Lancaster, symbolized by a red
that type of scenario. No, I'm pretty sure it was loosely based off the War of the Roses. I think he also stole some stuff from the Wheel of Time as well, Game of Houses, etc., etc. He was I've heard that he was perhaps less original than maybe some people would have it. Is a reappropriator of stuff. He might have also taken some stuff from Lord of the Rings as well. I think his notion was that he had to deconstruct Lord of the Rings and show the real gritty. Yeah, I don't know if I want a real gritty. I don't know if I want Lord of the Rings destructive. Deconstructed. Yeah, first try.
rose and the House of York, symbolized by a white rose. Their battle for the crown started with King Henry VI of Lancaster, whose weak and ineffective rule created political instability and disputes between the noble factions. This fostered ambitious claims to the throne and feuds over governance, as economic woes lingered from the 100 Years' War with France, and on top of that, privatized armies further fueled these conflicts. One
Yeah. Privatized armies. What could possibly go wrong?
claim by Richard, the Duke of York, followed by his son Edward IV, led to brutal battles, including the Battle of Towton in 1461, which was, quote, probably the largest and bloodiest battle on English soil. Basically, the whole region was still in recovery from its war with France, and a bunch of rich families were able to hire private armies to carry out their campaigns. But it
Delightful for them.
would be at the Battle of Bosworth Field.
Wait, when did the whole notion of feudal systems, when did that go away? I know at some point, was it Oliver Cromwell or whatever, the Protestant dude, I think, had kind of taken over, or Anglican, I'm not for sure which. Puritans? I don't know. At some point, kind of a religious theocracy had taken hold, I believe. I'm not sure exactly when that was in regard to this, though. And I'm not for sure exactly at what point it would have become exactly a constitutional monarchy or something like that, either.
in 1485, when Henry Tudor, who would later go on to be known as Henry VII, that a battle would occur that would end the War of the Roses. There, Henry VII defeated the last Yorkist king, and thus began the Tudor dynasty. Henry's marriage to Elizabeth of York not only united the warring houses, but ushered in an era of political stability and centralized royal authority in England. The Tudor monarchy helped take England from medieval factional warfare to a period of
I often wonder, like, what would be resolved if you just forced the person who was going to start a war to go out on the front lines, like, just ceremonially, the person who's the one who initiates it. Of course, then they would just have like probably some sort of, patsy initiate the war or something like that. I don't know. I've thought of this with regards to the whole Israel thing, where they were using pagers to blow up people's nether regions or whatever. I take that back. It wasn't with regards to that particularly, but with regards to their kind of the way they had gone about fighting Hamas or whatever, where they would very specifically target the leaders. It feels like at that point, if you're specifically targeting the leaders of a movement, they might just have some sort of puppeteer, like a figurehead that does the actual leading while the real people are behind the scenes doing whatever. But it feels like just in regards to morale, that wouldn't be the greatest thing. Like, people, soldiers, movements, etc., they do get attached to the figurehead, and it's one of those things that if the leader keeps getting killed, might not be the greatest for morale, generally speaking. So I don't know. I don't know if killing the leadership is a good strategy. Probably to some extent,
of religious reform, exploration, discovery,
How do we get there, anyways? It was a bit of a tangent.
and a cultural renaissance. Even if, he had to kill Elizabeth's family member to take that throne, now they're married and everyone has one king, so good, right?
And they lived happily ever after.
Well, Henry VII and Elizabeth had two sons, Arthur and Henry, who would later become Henry VIII, our central figure to this story. This new generation symbolized the next step forward
For whatever reason, I was just thinking that this was Henry VIII.
for a promising united England, and both boys were raised to become the rulers that the country would need. As the firstborn son, Arthur was groomed to become the next king from the time he was a toddler. Even his name, Arthur, was given to him, quote, to evoke memories of the great British king. Or, the guy in Camelot with a round table full of knights. So,
A sword that he pulled out of stone. Or alternatively, okay, so he was alternatively given the sword by the Lady of the Lake. I was just remembering the Monty Python. Moisin Ben Sterling scimitars is no system of something. It's not a model for a system of government or something like that. See the violence inherent in the system. Help, I'm being repressed.
Arthur was named after the ideal British king. There was a lot of expectations on him. When Arthur was a toddler, his father, Henry VII, negotiated the preliminary Treaty of Medina del Campo with Spain. In this treaty, Henry VII proposed that Arthur would be married to Catherine of Aragon, the young daughter of the Spanish king and queen. And in 1496, after further negotiations, it was agreed that Catherine would come to England in 1500 when Arthur was 14 and Catherine was 15. She would end up arriving a year later in October of 1501 when she was 16 years old. Which, yes, is very young to get married, but let's just be thankful in this scenario that her husband was also her age, and not the age is people tended to be in child weddings at the time. Arthur and Catherine...
I tend to think it was more the case of, like, women being the source of heirs, and consequently they would be married off to, perhaps, regardless of age, they'd be married off to much older gentlemen quite often, I imagine. I think that was maybe the way a lot of these things would have unfolded, possibly.
Were married 1 month later in November of 1501. The couple set up their household at Ludlow Castle, located on the border between England and Wales. Everything was set for the newlyweds to settle in and ready themselves for the power that would soon be passed down from Arthur's parents. However, in March of 1502, only 4 months after getting married,
I guess someone gets sick. That's generally what happened. Or someone got assassinated.
Arthur fell ill. We're not sure exactly
Called it.
what to. Possibly tuberculosis, possibly the plague, or the dreaded sweating sickness that ravaged Tudor England during this time. While the
Why did he do air quotes? Is this some sort of like salacious thing that's going on? Is he doing a euphemism?
exact cause remains unknown, theories suggest it
Like syphilis or something? Like
could have been a type of influenza or a hantavirus, which came from
that's weird.
rodents. And unfortunately for Arthur and the Tudor family, he died a
Okay, isn't there some sort of hantavirus coming out now that people are kind of worried that it's going to be the new COVID? I think it kills a lot faster than COVID or something like that, so they're not kind of that worried about it, I guess. But yeah, I think that the death rate is also a lot worse. It's maybe like 35%. So not great. Hopefully it doesn't spread like crazy. I think the way it spreads is a little bit different too than COVID. It's not like maybe an airborne type thing where it'd be more akin to Ebola or something like that.
month later on April
Still, prefer not to have that thing going around.
the 2nd, 1502. Now, there's varying reports on whether Arthur was sickly his entire life and hit a final wall shortly after being married, or if he had been healthy and very suddenly died of his illness.
She's a witch.
Speculations of him being murdered most likely arose, but historians agree that disease is what caused Arthur's death. However, if Arthur was a sick child and weak his entire life, it would make sense for the royal family to lie to the public about the medical state of their future king, especially since Arthur was a symbol for England's bright future for
Makes sense. Propaganda even back then. And it feels like sometimes with regards to, especially to rulers, the appearance of power is perhaps more important than the power itself. Sometimes there's they need to. No, never mind.
peaceful and flourishing England post-War of the Roses. Regardless, his young bride Catherine was now left a teenage widow in a foreign country. However, despite Arthur being dead, both England and Spain wanted to continue their alliance through marriage. So, the kingdoms agreed to have Catherine remarry Henry VIII once he was of age. And since Arthur's dead, Henry VIII is next in line for the throne. But in addition to Arthur's mysterious illness, rumors soon emerged surrounding his marriage to Catherine. Firstly, Catherine insisted that she never consummated her marriage to Arthur. We'll get more into this later as it relates to her marriage to Henry VIII, but her claim is especially important under Catholic law, at least, Catholic law at the time. Under this law, if Catherine did consummate her marriage to Arthur, that would make Catherine and Henry VIII brother and sister. And
okay, I guess that makes sense. I'd never really thought of that as being a thing, but, hey.
Their subsequent marriage would be considered incestuous, invalid, and gross. For those that don't know, around this time, it was very important in royal courts that newlyweds do.
Look, the whole notion of the royals being crazy about no, you can't be incest. I don't know. They were the most inbred group of people ever, but I guess that was cousin marriage or some crap like that. Still, feels like them falling all into a tizzy over the notion of incest would be. Especially in this scenario, which is not really incest at all. It's a marriage to one's. I wouldn't see it as incest in any case. Maybe in the case of an adopted or a stepmother or something like that, I would see it as a lot creepier. But in this case, it's you married into a family. You had no relation to them before that. So the notion is, I don't know.
The deed. The marriage was not considered valid or consummated until the two. Because of that, if Catherine's saying that they never consummated the marriage, then that effectively means they were never married. Meaning her and Henry VIII aren't siblings and can therefore get married and the alliance between the nations still be on. You can decide for yourself if you think they consummated the marriage or not based on these
I don't want to. Or to think about it.
Reports from the actual wedding night, which are, if nothing else, amusing. First of all, both Catherine and Arthur would have been put to bed in a very public ceremony. There would have been people to help.
I feel like that he did the same thing. Sweating disease. Put to bed. So I wonder if that was some sort of euphemism.
Arthur prepare for bed and see that he was properly situated with his new wife. Even the Marquess of Dorset reported recalling that Arthur had gotten into bed beside Catherine, who was, quote, lying underneath the coverlet. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. For marriages as important as this one, there would probably be someone there to witness the conjugation. More than
Why? And who would volunteer for that crap? It's like intimacy coordinators on they're actually doing it. What the crap is wrong with them? Pervert.
likely multiple people to prove that, the marriage is actually valid and all, which is funny until you remember that these were 15 and 16-year-olds. And then it is once again gross. In the books,
Yeah, I thought it was gross to start. I wasn't even thinking about that. I think it's just gross in general.
Six Wives, writer David Starkey describes how the newly married couple had been accompanied by a third party. Quote, "What happened then, only God knows. The herald, a strictly contemporary witness, assumed that nature had taken its course, and thus these worthy persons concluded and consummated the effect and complement of matrimony." According to one witness, the morning after his wedding night, Arthur asked one of his servants to fetch him a cup of ale and said, quote, "For I have been this night in the midst of Spain." I bet he thought he was really
Oh, sweet glory.
funny for that one. Later, Arthur also openly said, supposedly, quote, "Masters, it is a good pastime to have a wife." That sounds so much like, he was 15, right? That sounds so much like a 15-year-old who hooked up for the first time. And a lot
It's probably true.
of scholars agree, considering Arthur was saying this very loudly to anyone that came around, that the prince might have been overcompensating,
Yeah, it's also possible.
covering up the fact that he did not consummate his marriage. And as the witness who was described earlier left and just assumed that the
It's kind of one of those things where it sounds like almost like what a person would say if they were thinking of what a person would say if they'd had sex. Like, this is what a person who had sex would say. So I've got to say that.
consummation had happened. So there's a good chance that Catherine was right and the marriage was never actually consummated. Whether or not Arthur did in fact do the deed, it would be very easy for the people surrounding the royal family to lie about what they heard. And also, let's keep in mind, Arthur was only 15 at the time. He wouldn't be the first nor the last teenage boy to lie about his performance and experience in bed. And let's also keep in mind that these were two kids who were put into this situation against their will on behalf of giant empires across the world. Maybe they just didn't want to do it. But there is one folktale that sets the tone for the woes to come. In September of 1501, before Arthur
The plot thickens.
married Catherine, he visited Haddon Hall in Derbyshire. After a day of hunting, he went for a walk along the riverbank, eventually making his way toward the village of Hassop. As the evening went on, Arthur paused to rest by an old stone cross, and as he rested, a ghostly form of a woman appeared to him, dressed in white, who told him that he would marry a foreign bride and that the girl would soon be a widow. With that, she vanished, leaving Arthur to return to Haddon Hall, only to be informed that his intended Spanish bride had finally arrived in England. Now, there's many variations to this story. Some have Arthur sleeping, his encounter with the woman having
Memento mori? That's not right. I don't know if that's what that means. I just feel like that there's kind of a whole genre of ghostly premonitions or something like that.
happening in a dream. Others place the events happening within the grounds of Haddon Hall itself. Quote, "There's also variations on Arthur being told of Catherine's arrival or merely that he was to be married, but they all contain the same thing. A ghostly woman telling Arthur of his impending fate. When Arthur passed away, Prince Henry, his brother, was still a child, less than 11 years old. So naturally, as soon as Arthur was dead, he spent the rest of his childhood preparing for the throne. Catherine, meanwhile, lived on a, quote, limited allowance and later sporadic payments from the English royal family. Her
Well, you wonder like where she would have lived. Like I imagine she would have lived with the royal family-ish. So I guess I don't know. I don't know exactly like where her place of residence would have been though. Now maybe she would have lived with the royal family. Maybe she would have had her own room somewhere too. I'm not for sure.
father Ferdinand did not fully pay her dowry, or the traditional payment from a bride's family to the groom, to Arthur. And since she now was not to be married until Henry was of age, this meant that
Here's a question: how does that go? Is it just like the dowry? Because I've heard of like guys giving the gift of a goat or something to the father of the bride in order to get the woman, but in this case, the father of the bride is giving a dowry to the father of the groom. Is it just like whoever wants to get rid of their child the most, or whoever's the richest, or like what? Or maybe there's an exchange of gifts. I don't know.
Catherine could not claim money from Arthur's lands to support her household, so the Spanish princess wrote home to complain about poverty, isolation, and mistreatment. And Catherine's treatment during this time was not incidental, as changing politics meant her arranged union to Prince Henry was not a done deal. Catherine's mother, Queen Isabella, died in 1504. This was obviously a personal tragedy for Catherine, but was also a threat to peace in Spain. The uncertainty, coupled with Catherine's unpaid dowry, caused Henry VII to consider other candidates for his son's future queen. As a result, quote, Catherine grew frustrated.
Let's see where.
As he, quote, excelled in book learning, princess, fish. And according to the historic royal palaces, quote, other historians believe that the new king was actually in love with the strong-willed and intelligent princess. Either way, as was the ducal play of brothers Arthur and Henry VIII's father, King Henry VII, died on April 21st, 1509. So, at only 17 years old, Henry VIII ascended to the throne, and, quote, within days of his father's death, Henry chose the 24-year-old Catherine of Aragon as his queen. Now, some historians claim that the political play of a Spanish alliance with Catherine's powerful and well-connected family was too good to pass up, and that
it's always kind of a weird thing. Like, I hate the notion of being wealthy and having that as being a factor in the woman who would want me or something like that. Like, I guess maybe women would feel a similar way with regards to their own like beauty or something like that. But it feels like to some extent with regards to the person you want to choose to marry, you want them to like you for the right reasons, if that makes sense. It's the whole notion of, in the case of royals, I don't know. You can see that as being very annoying.
Henry was just honoring his father's dying wish. And according to the historic royal palaces, quote, other historians believe that the new king was actually in love with the strong-willed and intelligent princess. Either way, as for the new king, when Henry ascended the throne, he, quote, promised England the joys of spring after the long winter of Henry VII's reign. Henry proved to be the hotter and smarter brother, as he, quote, excelled in book learning as well as in the physical exercises of an aristocratic society. At 6 feet tall, he was powerfully built and a tireless athlete, huntsman, and dancer. And, you know, unlike his brother, he had a pulse. Publicly, Henry VIII
What a benison.
had all the makings
What a blessing.
of a perfect partner for the young widow. And she said that her and his brother never consummated the marriage, so real convenient they're not siblings. The two married on June 11th, 1509, and were devoted to each other for many years. All was well. In fact, Henry trusted Catherine to act as regent while he was fighting in France. This meant
Might be the last one of his wives that he trusted.
Catherine
Like, at what point did he start killing them?
was temporarily in charge and could rule on behalf of her husband. During this time, she successfully managed the kingdom and mobilized troops to defeat an invading Scottish army at the Battle of
Oh yeah, boss babe. You go, girl.
Flodden in 1513. And it was in this battle that the Scottish king
It's kind of a nice claymore, I think. Is that what that one would be? They have a very distinctive kind of cross guard as well as. I think that's how you'd almost recognize it, though. Yeah, they have a very distinctive cross guard. I'm not sure if the pommel would also be distinctive. That's a falchion, I think.
James IV was killed. Catherine even left her safe haven of London to, quote, ride north with over 1,500 sets of armor for her troops. Once
Look at her go. That's very nice of her.
defeated, Catherine reportedly sent the Scottish king's bloodied cloak to her husband, Henry. Quote from the historic royal palaces, she wanted to send James's body too, but remarked that, quote, our Englishmen's hearts would not suffer it. So not only did he seem to trust her, but she led a successful defense and killed the enemy king, and then sent the war trophy to her husband. That is, by, medieval English
So romantic.
definition, hot. Actually, that's hot to me today, too. While Catherine's prowess as a leader and partner to Henry VIII was without question, she still had one duty left to fulfill as queen: provide her husband with male heirs. Between 1510 and 1518, she suffered multiple stillbirths and miscarriages.
That's unfortunate.
The number
That's kind of weird too, because like she would be like of age. I could imagine. I know that like the infant mortality of premature pregnancies or like young pregnancies is pretty high. It's dangerous for the mother and the child involved. But like sure, like she was 24 when they got married, so she would have probably been more in the sweet spot for childbirth. But maybe it was just more dangerous back then.
of times Catherine became pregnant is unknown, but the closest she got to providing a son was in 1511. It was then that she gave birth to Prince Henry, Duke of Cornwall. The christening celebration included a lavish tournament at Westminster. But sadly, the baby died at just 52 days old, leaving the royal couple
That's unfortunate.
devastated. In 1516, 5 years later, Catherine gave birth to Princess Mary, who would later become Mary I. She would be Catherine's only child to survive to adulthood. Both Henry VIII and Catherine adored their daughter, yet Henry was still anxious for a boy. 2 years later, in 1518, Queen Catherine would endure her last pregnancy. The child, a daughter, did not survive. It's most likely that this final stillbirth may have been the
That's unfortunate.
breaking point for Henry and Catherine's relationship. The king was known to have
Okay, so she didn't die in childbirth. Okay, that's somehow probably less good, but less sad as well.
affairs, notably with Lady Elizabeth Blunt, with whom he had an illegitimate son in 1519, Henry Fitzroy. The affair began around 1514, and Blunt was a young maid of honor at court when she caught Henry's attention. The affair lasted several years, which was long compared to the king's other infatuations. As for Henry Fitzroy, King Henry VIII not only recognized him, but gave him the title of Duke of Richmond and Somerset, something
That's cool. Yeah.
rare for a child born out of wedlock.
Not cool that he had an affair, but cool that he was nice to the child.
The affair ended soon after the birth of their son, and Blunt ended up being married off to someone else, most likely because she had lower noble status. This public acknowledgement was important and set a precedent for the king's actions to come, as it showed that he was capable of fathering a healthy son. And the reason for not producing a legitimate male heir with Queen Catherine was the fault of the queen, or at least that was the idea. However, this affair paled in comparison to what was coming next. Anne Boleyn arrived at the royal court in 1522 as one of Catherine's ladies in waiting. Essentially, she was one of the queen's female personal assistants who helped with dressing, personal care, and managed her correspondence. Anne was raised and educated in the Netherlands.
It occurs to me that the notion of like a whole bunch of people getting together with nothing to do pretty much at court or whatever the case was like, yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Idle hands are the devil's playground, so they say.
And France, the latter of which saw her develop a strong interest in literature, music, art, and religious philosophy. Her views on religious reform would be instrumental in her later relationship with Henry VIII. When she arrived in England,
Okay, so Henry VIII was the one who actually kind of disconnected from the Catholics, right? Because he wanted to get remarried, because he wanted his wedding or his marriage is annulled. Would that have been the origin of the Anglican movement or something like that?
Anne was described as being
Admittedly, I think, especially at that time, the Catholic Church was it's a little bit corrupt, perhaps. At least in some regards.
elegant, young, and intelligent. Henry was almost immediately obsessed with her, but Anne
Not that I approve of the notion of, disannulling marriages or whatever, but like, yeah, I feel like that if you had wanted to switch over from Catholic to Anglican, there would have been ample reasons, perhaps, in the Middle Ages or whatever, to say, okay, no, the Catholic Church is off in the weeds or doing a whole bunch of weird crap or something like that.
Was not just another mistress. She turned down numerous advances from the king, quote, either for her virtue or in pursuit of her own or her family's ambitions. Instead, she held out for the possibility of marriage. So naturally, being the horn dog he was, Henry turned his attention to Anne's older sister, Mary Boleyn, who was also one of Catherine's ladies in waiting. The affair lasted somewhere between 1522 and 1525, and it's widely believed that Mary's daughter, Catherine Carey, was Henry's illegitimate child. But since Henry would never claim the child nor take Mary as his wife,
Okay, that's annoying. He was nice to the other one.
we don't know for sure. The affair was only acknowledged because of Henry's own admission in a letter to Catherine. As for Anne, she knew that Henry was desperate for a son, so it's possible that Anne rejected him at first to ensure that she could become queen. But with Catherine at Henry's side, it seemed impossible. In order to marry Anne, Henry would first need to end his marriage to Catherine, which was very difficult to do during this time. Divorce was not only extremely rare, but formerly separated couples were not allowed to marry again. What Henry
Yeah, I feel like that's the whole thing in the Catholic. At this point, like, England still would have been under Catholic rule, right? Or still would have been an issue. And also, the other lady was from Spain, which was kind of very Catholic, if I remember.
would need was a statement from the Pope that confirmed his marriage to Catherine was invalid. In other words, Henry needed an annulment. Once this was granted, the king would not only be rid of Catherine, but any children he would have by Anne would be legitimate heirs to the throne. Remember earlier the big question regarding Arthur and Catherine's marriage? Did they in fact do the deed? Well, that was the main argument behind Henry's case. He fixated on
What the? Harry?
Catherine's marriage to Arthur and whether she had even consummated their relationship. Deep examination into his brother's supposed sex life would be incredibly weird for most people, but it was entirely on the table for Henry.
Okay, so he's trying to prove that his brother did in fact have sex, and therefore the marriage was incestuous, therefore invalid. Okay, got it.
If Henry could just prove
You clever bastard.
that his dead brother Arthur had actually had sex with Catherine, then he could argue he married his own sister and was therefore guilty of incest, which is considered a serious sin in the church, and also, once again, seriously gross, and considered seriously gross by me. This would then make Henry's marriage to Catherine illegitimate, despite the Catholic Church allowing the union to happen. So in other words, if Henry can prove that Arthur slept with Catherine, it would make his current marriage retroactively null and void, which, you know, loving husband and whatnot. Henry had Cardinal Wolsey appeal to the Pope on his behalf, but
That's some like 5D chess thinking. Well, I don't know if it's exactly super clever, but still, kind of a low sort of cunning.
Catherine would not go quietly. She was the Queen of England and deeply believed that the throne was her divine duty, as was her promise to God to be Henry's wife. More so, Catherine wanted to protect her daughter Mary from being declared illegitimate, which would happen if the marriage was considered null. If not already evidenced by her leadership qualities as a regent, Catherine was a, quote, proud and intractable woman who would carry on war against him for her child. She had very powerful allies and appealed to her nephew, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, to support her case to the church. In 1529, she appeared in court at
So, yeah, I'm thinking Holy Roman Emperor would have been an Italian thing at this point. I don't know who exactly held the center of the Holy Roman Empire. It might have been Byzantine, though. Byzantine?
Blackfriars in front of her husband and two
Constantinople. That sounds right.
cardinals, one of whom
I think at least at one point that would have been the seat of the Holy Roman Empire. Maybe somewhere in Germany, too. I think Charlemagne was involved in that at some point.
was Thomas Wolsey. It was here that Catherine fell to her knees and publicly swore that she had never consummated her marriage to Arthur and that she had been Henry's true wife since their relationship began 2 decades ago. After years of investigation, Henry's case was finally settled. He lost, as the Pope refused to grant the annulment. But the king would not accept defeat, and what he did next was unthinkable. He broke ties with Rome and the Pope. Inspired by the Reformation,
Hey. Hell hath no fury like a man who wants to get a woman, I suppose. Anyways, you guys can go check out the rest of that if you like. The Ghost Wives of King Henry VIII by Wendigoon, but this channel is called Wendigang. It's his other channel. One of his other channels. I don't know if he has more than that or not. Anyways. Edward Bloch was... Alright. Edward Bloch, 30th of January 1872 to the 1st of June 1945, was an Australian physician practicing in Linz. Born to a Jewish family of Czechoslovakian origin, Bloch was the family doctor of Adolf Hitler and his family till 1907. Bloch oversaw the treatment of Hitler's mother, Chiara, when she was dying of breast cancer, charging the family very little to sometimes nothing for her treatment. So this guy is basically Adolf Hitler's Jewish friend. I can't be racist, I have a Jew. No. Following the German annexation of Austria in 1938, Hitler described him as Edeljude, and bestowed him the Geheimstaatspolizei protection in the midst of Kristallnacht and the escalation of anti-Jewish sentiment in Germany. Hitler allowed Bloch to emigrate to the United States, where he lived until his death in 1945, succumbing to stomach cancer. Well, that's nice of him, I guess. Edward Bloch was born on the 30th of January 1872 in Podrad, Bohemia, Austro-Hungary. He studied medicine in Prague at Charles University and served as a medical officer in the Australian Army. He was stationed in Linz from 1899 till his discharge in 1901, at which point he opened a private practice there. His practice was in the Baroque house at 12 Landstrasse, where he also lived with his family, his wife Emily, née Kafka. I'm assuming that's her maiden name. I think that's what that means, right? A birth name is the name a person's given when they were born. So that they'll say née Kafka, so that was her maiden name, I think. And their daughter Trude, who was born in 1903. According to Linz's future mayor, Ernest Correff, Bloch was held in high regard, particularly among the lower and indigent. Indigent? It's like that. I don't know what that means. Sorry. Indigent. Poor, needy. Alright. It's kind of redundant, but hey, it's a fancy word for it, so I might have to use that. Hitler's family doctor. The first member of the Hitler family, Bloch. The first member of the Hitler family Bloch saw was Adolf. In 1904, Adolf had become seriously ill and was bedridden due to a serious lung ailment. Due to this, he was allowed to abandon his school career and return home. However, after checking Hitler's files, Bloch later maintained that he had treated the young man only for minor ailments, cold or tonsillitis, and that Hitler had been neither robust nor sickly. He also stated that Hitler did not have any illness whatsoever, let alone a lung disease. In 1907, Hitler's mother, Clara Hitler, was diagnosed with breast cancer. She died on the 21st of December after intense suffering involving daily medication with iodoform, a foul-smelling and painful corrosive treatment typically used at the time and administered by Bloch. Because of the poor economic situation of the Hitler family, Bloch charged reduced prices, sometimes taking no fee at all. This showed in 1908 when Hitler wrote Bloch a postcard assuring him of his gratitude and reverence, which he expressed with handsome gifts. Emigration. After Hitler's annexation of Austria in March 1938, Anschluss, life became harder for Austrian Jews. After Bloch's medical practice was closed on the 1st of August 1938, his daughter and son-in-law emigrated overseas. The 66-year-old Bloch then wrote a letter to Hitler asking for help. As a consequence, and as and was, as a consequence, put under special protection by the Gestapo. So the Gestapo protecting the Jew. That's what you'd call irony. He was the only Jew in Linz with this status. Bloch stayed in the south with his wife undisturbed until formalities for his immigration from the Third Reich and emigrated to the United States were complete, without any interference from the authorities. They were able to sell their family home at market value, highly unusual with the distressed sales of emigrating Jews at the time, and Nazi expropriation of the Jewish assets through the Reichsflight tax. Moreover, the Bloches were allowed to take the equivalent of something, Royal Marks? I don't know. What is that? The Reichsmark was the currency of Germany from 1924 until the fall of Nazi Germany. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Equivalent to 70 euros in 2021 out of the country. Moreover, the Bloches were allowed to take the equivalent of 16 Reichsmarks, equivalent to 70 euros out of the country. The unusual amount allowed to the Jews was the usual amount allowed to Jews was a mere 10 Reichsmarks, equivalent to 44 euros in 2021. In 1940, Bloch emigrated to the U.S. and settled in the Bronx, New York City, but was no longer able to practice medicine because his medical degree from Austro-Hungary was not recognized. He died of a stomach cancer in 1945 at the age of 73, barely a month after Hitler's death. Huh. Interesting. And that is Edward Bloch, Hitler's Jewish friend, I guess. Strange. Alright, we're gonna play some Age of Empires here. Gonna try to anyways. Not sure which campaign to choose though. Not sure which one. Is it going? Let me double check and make sure this is. Shut up. Not the deuce. Come on. Why is it not? Yeah, there we go. There we go. Alright. We're starting in Europe. Let's go with Joan of Arc.
February 19th, Army camp near Vaucouleurs. This morning I woke to visions of fire and steel. These nightmares come more often, now that I've seen my beloved France eaten away by years of war. I wandered through camp, ignoring the new snowfall, but observing the wounds and weariness of every soldier under my command. Observing the desperation in their eyes. It was then that I first saw the girl. She told us that her name was Joan. She told us she was but a peasant who did not know how to ride or fight. She told us that she intended to rescue France. The darkness lifted from the men's souls. Her voice rang with conviction, and we drank in her every word. I may have lost my faith, but Joan has not lost hers, and that is enough for me. Joan has asked our ragged band of soldiers to take her to Chinon, where the rightful ruler of France, the Dauphin, hides from his foes. The war-torn land in between is infested with enemy marauders, and we will lose many men. Death is by now an old companion, but for Joan, we will face it again.
Bonjour, Joan. My colleague and I will escort you to the Chateau of the Dauphin, or else we will die trying.
I am Jean de Metz, and I will protect you with my life.
Oil.
You are Joan of Arc. I have heard your claims and believe what you say. We will follow you to Chinon.
With stilted speaking.
Certes. Oyel. Livet. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Livet. Oyel.
Wait! You might have need of a few archers on the road ahead.
Certes.
You must be wary on the road ahead. Our enemies, the English, are out in force, and their Burgundian allies are thick as rats. Discretion is the better part of valor.
I spotted a nest of Burgundians to the north. Best to go another way.
Livet. À la bataille.
Objectives here. The scouts. Alright, John the Maid must reach the French army at Vancouliao. I don't know. Stupid French. Where several men have pledged to escort her safely to Chinon. No. Alright, Joan the Maid has reached the French army camp at Valcouleur. I don't know. Several men have pledged to escort her safely to Chinon. Chinon is dangerous. English soldiers and bandits going over the countryside. However, there are many Frenchmen who are willing to help Joan the Maid reach her destination, so I think
Certes.
exploring is going to be the name of the game.
Oyel. Livet. Certes. Oyel.
Look out! A battle rages ahead! Stay back, lest we be caught in the crossfire.
Certes. Oyel.
Another glorious loss for France. I hope you really can turn the tide of this war, Joan of Arc.
Livet. Oyel. Certes. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Oyel. Bonjour.
Highwaymen preying on helpless travelers? What has become of our homeland?
Que fait? Certes. Prêt. Livet. Certes. Oyel. Assault. Da. Livet. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Oyel.
Venison.
Livet. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Livet. Certes. Oyel. Certes. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Oyel.
The bridge is out. The English must have destroyed it. We must find another way to Chinon.
Oyel. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Da. À la bataille. Livet. Oyel. Assault. Que fait? Bonne joie. Certes. Oyel. Certes. Prêt. Livet. Assault.
Que fait?
Cueilleur. Oyel. Livet. Certes. Livet. Certes. Oyel. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Livet. Certes. À la bataille. Oyel. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Livet. Oyel.
We're back again.
Certes. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Livet. Oyel.
Gather your belongings, men. We follow Joan of Arc.
Prêt.
We will carry that ram along with us. It may yet be of use.
Certes. Oyel. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Certes. Livet. Certes.
Are you mad? Across that bridge lies a
Oh, yeah.
Burgundian castle and many men.
Livet.
Turn back at once.
Certes. Livet.
If you're supposed to go through this outpost or something.
Oyel. Livet. Que fait? Certes.
Okay?
Que
Livet.
gueule? Prêt. Oyel. Que fait? Livet. Que gueule? Que fait? Certes. Oyel. Livet.
We need a mangonel or ram to get through these walls.
Que gueule? Oyel. Certes. Bonjour. À la bataille. Prêt. Ça. Que gueule? Prêt.
Oui.
Que fait? Assaut.
Prêt.
You French don't know when to give up.
Prêt. Livet. Oyel. Certes.
Oui.
Que gueule? Da. Que fait? Oyel. Certes. Livet. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Assaut. À la bataille. Certes. Livet. Oyel. Certes.
An embuscade! There are Burgundian soldiers everywhere! Hurry west to the river where we can make our escape!
Oyel. Livet. Oyel.
Certes. You mean to lead the French army?
Such confidence I have not seen since this war began.
Very well.
You have 6 more soldiers. Jean the Maid.
Que faites? Cueilleur?
Pirax. Pirax. Certes.
Here they come! Fire!
Prêt. Cueilleur?
Chinon, we have made it.
The Chateau of the Dauphin.
The Dauphin will see you now.
Did it.
As Joan's footsteps echoed down the marbled hall of the chateau, the fat and whispering dukes did naught but stare. The Dauphin himself seemed afraid as she kissed his feet. "My gentle Dauphin," she demanded, "why does England claim what is ours? Why are you not crowned King of France, as is your right?" The courtiers began to murmur. The Chamberlain whispered lies into the Dauphin's ear. But the Dauphin pushed the Chamberlain away and rose to meet Joan's gaze. She stands only to the shoulder of the shortest man, but all of us must look up to speak to her. I know not what silent conversation passed between the Dauphin and his would-be savior, but it was obvious that His Majesty was in the same thrall as we.
Thank you guys for watching, and have a delightful weekend.